There we are.
Okay, we are live. Welcome to the Virgin Author Show. We are three friends bonded by our love of writing, struggling to navigate the publishing world. I'm Lissa Reese, and I am a virgin author.
Hey guys, I'm Jana Vandelar, and I'm a virgin author.
Hi. Welcome. I am Mandy McGuire, and I am so pleased to introduce our guest tonight. We're so happy to have Meghan Jarvis. She is a clinical psychotherapist, an author, a podcast host, a TEDx speaker, and a sought-after consultant with over 20 years of experience in the fields of trauma, grief, and loss. Meghan's forthcoming memoir follows her experience of deteriorating. I can't talk tonight, so I'm not sure why I'm doing this.
That's a hard one.
Mental health after her father's and her mother's deaths in short succession, eventually receiving some therapeutic support for herself that she often offers to her clients. So the end of the hour is a touching story of how unresolved trauma can threaten the security of everything that we hold dear. Meghan, your book is releasing in just a few months. Congratulations and welcome to the show.
It's releasing in just a few weeks.
I know, I read that wrong again.
It's on the 14th. Which
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
So exciting.
That's your book in our background, you guys.
Yep,
so
there it is.
I didn't know which way to die.
Exactly.
The cover.
I'm moving out of the way.
Oh, well, it's fun. Okay. Yay. I'm sorry. We're excited.
Well, let's just jump in. So I read this book and I found myself wishing for a therapist with the compassion and insight of the one you worked with.
Yes.
And in the book you call her Callie. I don't know if that's your name, but
I know.
So I didn't think I was going to be able to relate to this book, Meghan, because I am blessed to still have both my parents. I have my spouse, I have my siblings, I have my children. But I really felt that the advice she gave you through your trauma was valuable for communication skills in general. And even though I've been married 35 years now to my husband, we still have trouble communicating. and I think maybe a lot of us have unresolved childhood trauma that we don't even realize is impacting our behavior to this day. So there's a quote you have in here that I'd like you to talk about a little more. And you say, feelings are not facts. And these sensations in our bodies are messages from a scared child who couldn't and shouldn't control the behavior of a child. But I feel those sensations controlling my behavior anytime I get in a fight with my husband.
Yeah, absolutely.
Behavior of an adult is what you're saying. They shouldn't control.
Say child. Okay. I'm with you, Mandy. None of us can talk today.
It's contagious.
I'm the Virgo here. Sorry, guys. But no, go ahead.
Thank you.
No, I just want to.
One of the most thrilling things about therapy when I started was, and I'm not sure I would have signed up if I had understood, I went in there because I was like sad about a breakup, and I was like, good, a therapist will make me less sad, and then I can go on my married 20 something way. And I think Callie, just from the way I came in, the fact that I was really struggling with something that other people seemed to recover from more quickly, I think she immediately was like, I wonder what has gone on in this woman's life where she is, I'm not saying this with judgment, but just overreacting, that she has outsized reactions to things. And now, because I'm on the other side of all of that, there are things that are hallmarks of unresolved trauma. And it is kind of this amazing puzzle piece to say, listen, when there are big events that happen in your life, as happens in mine, a death that goes unspoken for decades, you as a little 9-year-old don't have the intellect to really process that or even explain it to yourself, but you will feel the feelings. Feelings are emotions are electrical currents that just run through your body. And I happen to have them very intensely and always have. So these little electrical currents are running through your body. What turns them into feelings is when you assign them words. So if no one is talking to you about feeling words, you are going to decide that those are just things that are about you. Right? Like, this is about me. So by the time I stepped into my therapist's office, I had a lot of stories about what was about me. And what she said to me was, yeah, lots of people who have unresolved trauma, who didn't get the support that they needed, have the same kind of reactions as you. And then she introduced me to some of them. I did group therapy and I was like, wow, I am not as odd or other or difficult or hard as I thought. And really, she had us kind of crack open our own owner's manual. Think about the car that you drive and how you know, like, it takes 7 minutes before the heat in the seat turns on, even though it says it turns on in 3 minutes, it doesn't. Or like the left side has more air conditioning, or you can really still drive for 30 miles even though it says that you're on empty. Like, how your car works. Yeah. And in therapy, she was like, just let's figure out how your car works.
I love
and then
that.
Let's see if we can get it to work differently, if you would like that.
Or no, I love that. I mean, that's what I was going to say. Every reader will find something in your book that they'll just relate to at some point. And of course, we've all been through some children and childhood stuff. And I think I love that you're saying this is just who I am. And I felt different, I was more sensitive or whatever. I processed it differently. And to have somebody like your Callie just, break it down like that, genius. I mean, this girl, I loved her too. I was right with you.
And it was your experience with her really that led you to become a therapist yourself, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the thing that I'll say about Callie is that I felt like she really liked me. That was the most important thing, is that when I walked in, she had this like gorgeous laugh and she thought I was funny. She thought I was smart. And, I was still coming off the age of like Kate Moss had the most amazing body for a woman.
Yeah.
Like, we have different options now, but like as a woman who was size 14, I had all these like, oh my God, I just don't fit into any of the desirable boxes. And I would walk in and she would be like, look at you, you look gorgeous. Oh, you're so funny. And I don't think she was faking.
Yeah.
And that she really was the first woman in my life. And this really goes to the root of attachment, who seemed to kind of adore me and really care. Yes, I was also paying her money, but I really felt deeply cared about. And because I saw her, sometimes twice a week, and she was rooting for me, I could take risks based on her care of me that I couldn't take by myself. And really, that's the root of attachment, right? That's what good connection is supposed to be, is you can do more on account of someone caring.
She is totally a gift. And I do think that comes up later, I think, in our questions, but it's weird how people pop into your life when you're ready to hear them and stuff. And I learned a huge lesson throughout your whole book. And I think anybody needs to pick this up and just, you'll be like that. So like one of my things I didn't think I was going to talk about, but quickly, when my mother passed away, which is similar to what my husband was off, and I was like, do you know? And I was bad. And I realized this is like 20 years later since my mom had passed. After reading your book, I'm like, I'm still being really mean to him about that. And I actually apologized. Like, he's like, I think I was there. I'm like, oh God, well, whatever. So we'll move on. But I just wanted to say thank you for giving me that insight and growth throughout it. I unexpectedly bawled my eyes out during the Labyrinth story with a candle surrounding your dimming light. Wow, it was so powerful to me. And you wrote, the sense of love and connection felt as shocking as my grief. You were around an amazing group of people in that book, in that point specifically. And I said, I was writing, do you feel as a therapist, the things like this just what I was just saying, the things like this do happen when you need them. I mean, it's
timing.
Have to be open to receive it, I think. But I mean, wow, they were just there for you.
I mean, I think when my dad died and I knew he was dying, and so that the part of the story that you're talking about, that is what was happening. I was with a bunch of clinicians and just away from my dad on a weekend, and we knew he was dying, and for whatever reason, I just energetically dropped into like the universal truth of grief and loss. And whatever it was, this situation that I thought was going to be fake and feel like McDonald's turned into like this holy crucible. And many people were like, I don't even know what was happening, but I was inside it. Like there were many people crying, many people were connected. And I do think that at the base of humanity, we are actually intricately connected by both love and loss. And many times in my life, I have found myself pulled into energy or texted someone or reached out or extended, and somebody be like, I can't believe you're texting me. This just happened. And I'm like, well, I just think maybe the universe kind of pulls the energy to go where it needs to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I do. And I think I only feel that more and more. You know, I was having a really crazy day yesterday and I was in my feelings and I was having a moment, and I threw my phone down on the you know, passenger side of the car, and my stupid dog hit it with its tail, and all of a sudden Leanne Rimes, you guys know that country singer? So
Yeah.
no offense anybody, I don't really like her. Leanne Rimes suddenly is now playing out of my car. I don't have her on a playlist, like I don't listen to country music, but my mother loved Leanne Rimes. Earlier in the day, I had been saying to myself, like, God, I just miss my mom. I just miss my mom. I just like, I'm in my feelings and I just miss her today. And freaking Leanne Rimes comes on. And I don't know if the dog did that or if but it wasn't random. You know, it just couldn't possibly.
You just gave me the shivers.
Yes, the right time.
I know. And I was like, okay, Mom, that was, you know, sometimes I see things like cardinals and I'm like, I don't know, there's a lot of birds around here. Is that really a thing? I was like, Leanne Rimes. All right, Mom, I got you.
That's a sign.
100%.
That was a knock on the head. That wasn't just a cardinal flame.
I mean, I don't think I could pull Leanne Rimes up on my phone easily right now. And the fact that it popped up while I was driving, I was like, what the? Okay.
That's impressive. Well, I have a question kind of about trauma and the body. And it's interesting. I was just chatting yesterday with a group of us, my friend Stacy, our friend Stacy Powell's. We were talking about trauma and the body. So in your book, you talked about you tried all the self-care options that you recommend for your patients, like exercise and sleep and food and all of the things. And it doesn't always work for everyone. Certain things do and don't work. And you took up swimming and you came away with water trapped in your ear. Your doctor claimed that life raised at the beach was to blame. But as a therapist, you knew that we often grieve with our bodies, and that I'm going to quote you. I love this. And that maybe your ears had grown gates, threatening to close your mind off from any other terrible thing the world might want to tell me. So can you talk about, like, share a little bit about what happened to you? And then also really, like, I understood that whole, like, how trauma impacts our bodies.
Yeah. So a lot of that is sort of like my bread and butter. When I consult, a lot of what I'm talking to people about is just teaching them almost like you would teach preteens about puberty. I'm just teaching people, often in corporate settings, like, this is what happens. So like when your accountant is getting the numbers wrong, it's not because he's suddenly an idiot. It's because his central nervous system is overwhelmed. And actually the part of his brain that normally does math is not getting the right kind of oxygen anymore. So part of the reason I write about my own experience in the book is that it is so drastic. That if you think about the central nervous system, which is your brain and your spine, and it has this loop, it sends messages down into the body and then it sends messages back up into the brain. You can see how it might get really mixed up really fast.
Muddy.
And, you know, for me, my typical mixed upness looked like me throwing my back out, which does also happen in the book. And and I also had other symptomatic things that I do sort of feel like it's almost like I respect the system, where I'm like, you wanted me to stop. You needed me to stop. That this was not, you know, it's like an injury, like you're running and it's like, well, can you run on that ankle or is it broken? and you should definitely not run on it because you will injure yourself. And sometimes the amount of pain that you're in isn't going to tell you because your whole body isn't quite getting the pain messages. You're like plowing through them. And the central nervous system, when it gets overwhelmed, it's just very reactive, but it tries, your body and your mind actually try to take care of you. So even when someone's having a panic attack is a version of taking care of you. It's like telling you that this is a very bad thing and you need to get away from it. So that's what panic is about. So I did have this extraordinary thing happen where bones grew across the interior canal of my ear. It is a condition that mostly impacts surfers under the age of 20, more men than women. And it's a bit like having a bunion on your foot. Like some people have it, some people don't, but it grew sort of, like stalactites and stalagmites, so up and down like teeth, and they were closing. And if they completely occlude, like if they completely close, they don't like to do the surgery because then the bone fuses. So I was swimming and that water trapped in my ear, and that is how I learned that my ears had created gates. And just was like,
crazy.
I mean, and at one point, one of the doctors was like, "Well, is listening a big thing in your work?"
Yeah, I remember that was
literally. My best friend was like, "This whole traumatized trauma therapist plot is a bit much right now. Like, you can't listen with your ears."
No, I mean, this is why we need people like you, Megan, because you need to know and get to professional people that just have can help guide and pinpoint you. So
That's right.
And that's one of the things I wanted to bring up next is that I think too often we try to push through our pain on our own, and either because of this social programming that tells us we should be able to handle things on our own, we don't need these crutches, or the belief that our intellectual understanding will have some kind of experiential value.
Yeah.
And I think that's the lesson you learned as a therapist, is that even though you had ushered countless people through their own traumas, when it happened to you, it was worthless. And you say something in the book here, wait, I have the quote. "The purpose of dredging up the past is to process old feelings with a new skill set. And yet, without somebody to teach us those skills, we tend to dredge up the past to punish ourselves with the same retelling over and over."
That's right.
So I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about the value of therapy.
Yeah. So, that's exactly, you just described really nicely the sort of pulling up and then punishing yourself. That is really what trauma is. So like trauma is something bad that happens. And I think part of the reason the book is relatable is that everybody has experienced something bad happening. Being traumatized is the meaning you take away from it as being more negative than it was when you started. That's what traumatized is. But the way that we feel traumatized is in our body. We have 12 physical systems in our body, like your endocrine system and your vascular system and all those things. And all 12 of them are impacted by profound loss. And if you have not been taught how to regularly regulate your body, and children who have childhood trauma usually did not have enough support, that body is going to ring like a gong without anybody holding it and saying, "This is too much. We have to tamper this right now." And so what we don't want to do is have the gong ring for any reason, right? Because the other thing that the brain does is it categorizes similar experiences. So like, even though we don't want to say this out loud, the death of a cat, the death of a grandfather, the death of a child, they all kind of get categorized in the same lump place in the brain, because the brain is sort of a predictive tool that's trying to show you how to manage a situation. And what happens if we don't have new tools is we just shake all those experiences open. The death of my cat, the death of my grandmother, all of that, I'm feeling all of that inside my system now. And I don't have resources. So for me, I had all the skills, all the degrees. I mean, I'm like a Navy SEAL in terms of trauma trained.
Nice.
Thing is, if you think about trauma, if you think about like 0 is you're asleep and 10 is you're in a panic attack. For most people, if you get to an 8, whether you ramp up to an 8 or you are car accident into an 8, for most people, an 8 is too much to manage on their own.
Mm.
And kind of like ice forming across a windshield, like if it crystallizes and it meets across the sides, you're going to be there for a while, like scraping from the top and turning the heat on from underneath. It takes a minute. So the piece, all my education and all my experience, the advantage that I had was I knew I needed help. I knew I needed to call my friend Susan. I was not confused. Most clients who come to me come because somebody is threatening to leave them, or they're going to lose their job, or they already have lost their job, because their symptoms are not abating. They do not believe, because the world says your dad died, you get 3 days off. Like that is the world we live in. I took 6 months off, and I spent 3 weeks in full-time inpatient trauma treatment for my experience. So part of the reason I wanted to write the book, and part of the reason I got really down and nitty gritty, is I really wanted people to see, like, if anyone should have been able to just skate through unscathed, it was me. And I went all the way down on the knees.
You need to have somebody from the outside actually see it, because you're not seeing it. You're as trained as you are. I don't think people can even, as level as I think I can be or whatever. I mean, I need people to point out and say, no, look at this. Or just like what I said with my father, it was just like, with my mother dying, it was just like, oh, that was like 20 years ago. They made the book.
Right.
Like,
that's right.
Guys, something, Janet and Mandy, can I ask you guys something? Did you know there was such a thing as an inpatient trauma center? Because I had never heard of that.
Yeah,
I did.
You did?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, friends and stuff that.
Yeah.
There are not that many. Mostly what you hear about is inpatient drug treatment.
Yeah.
But if you think about what is the use of drugs is sort of like a less good version of medical intervention.
Yeah.
Medical intervention that has caused you a secondary problem, which is now you're sick from it, to treat trauma. So a lot of times when people are going to a facility, they detox, they're taken off, and then they get into the trauma work. The center that I was at just didn't have the detox, because although many, many people there were also sober, it just started with what happened to you and how can we help?
Yeah. So we just have 2 more questions before we jump into like the second part of our show, but we're really running out of time. So these last 2 are going to go a little bit quicker.
Okay, I'll go quick.
I really related. You said something in this book about needing others. I don't remember where I took this quote, but I think it was about your husband. But I just want you to talk about it a little bit. I'll read the quote. But I think so many people who've had childhood trauma, or they haven't had the right resources as a child, they make sure they don't need anybody, and they're not vulnerable, right? And the quote I want to read, it says, you had accidentally let myself need someone other than me, and was suddenly reminded, I love this, that it was a dangerous way to navigate the world. Like, we don't want to trust other people. If like, I'm talking just personally, my trauma background, you don't talk about your problems. You don't need anybody else. You handle your situation, you move forward. Can you kind of just talk a little bit more about that? Because I think a lot of people, handle it the same way.
Yeah. So it is, again, when you go through school and you're learning how to show up best for your clients, part of what you're learning is the assessment tools. What are the right questions to ask? And so there's one of those questions, which is like, do you generally like solve problems in a group and with other people, or do you like to do things by yourself? That's better than saying, were you traumatized in childhood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a way of sort of getting an idea of sort of, what do you do when you are in distress? And here's the thing, there's a thing called polyvagal theory, which is it just talks about how do humans regulate themselves. And it turns out, just like Mr. Rogers told us, we all actually first, before we do fight, flight, or freeze, we all look for helpers. We all look to a network of people to say, is this really happening? Is this dangerous? Are we okay? Should we run? What should happen? And it's possible that the network of helpers can cool the whole system down right there. But when you've lived in a system as a child where that never happened, you don't even know to believe in that. That's not even a thing to believe in. Right. And so when I'm talking to my kids, I'm like, listen, if you can't tell me, tell your brother. If you can't tell your brother, tell your aunt. I just need you to tell somebody. I need you to not be in the pain on your own, because that's too much. And we need to spread it across a network. So I'll just say this. When we got married, when Mike and I got married, if we had a whole bunch of people who've known me, for 20 years, they would say, oh, I remember this. The priest said, this is illogical, what you're doing. This goes against our wiring for safety, because one of you will outlive the other and absolutely irrevocably break the other one's heart. And there was like in the audience, but he knew that rector, Paul Abernathy, he was talking to me. He knew exactly. He had known me for a long time, and he knew exactly what he was doing. Yeah. And he was saying, it is powerful that you choose this. It is a great to choose this.
You've been blessed. I swear you've had such good people, and you were smart enough to use them, which brings me into one of your therapists. Well, I'll do our final question quick, and it ties in with this a little bit. One of your therapists noted, it's not necessary to figure out how much help you need or who will give it to you. Help is a complete sentence, which I just love. I thought it was like, oh my God, every reader should read this. And so we're spreading, anyway, so it kind of ties in. Help is a complete sentence. So even reminding us to allow ourselves to help ourselves. I mean, that was another step that you were kind of catching on in there. And even it's a foreign concept, especially for women, I think. Particularly, someone gave you a journal. So I'm kind of segueing into this. Someone gave you a journal. So us as writers, as you were leaving your facility. And I wondered if that prompted you to write this book. And if so, is writing a form of helping yourself, which I totally believe in. Honestly.
Yeah. I mean, this whole book was driven from the fact that I didn't want to do any talk therapy, and the kind of therapy that I like, that really works for me, is all my friends in town do it, and you can't go see your friends for therapy. Yeah. So I didn't really have the same kind of options as I did when I was in Tennessee. So I started writing. There's a lot of neuroscience about taking the thoughts and allowing your eyeballs to see your hand write it down. It gives your mind a release. You don't have to think about it so much. Yeah. And in grief, there is this, mechanism that we want to move towards, which is like, okay, the person died, but you want to be able to remember them, and you want to remember them as not only dead, not only dying. You want to remember how they showed up in a way that was supportive and loving. And it's called continuing bonds. And I used my writing in the beginning to write letters to my mom. I would just say, like, I called her Mimi, and I would say, dear Mimi, here's what you should know. Here's what I would have told you. Here's what I would have. And then eventually, after I sort of processed enough out, I really got into the words and into like conveying it and meaning. And I really loved sharing it and having people do like you guys are doing. I mean, I'm not going to go to sleep tonight because this is so thrilling to have people say, I related to it. I learned from it. I know that because I'm a reader. I'm a, voracious reader. And I know what that feels like, to feel less alone because somebody told you their story and you were in it. It's amazing.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Should be reading this. So I'm just telling you. It's like, so anyway, Mandy.
Okay. So do you have another 5-ish minutes that you could give us?
I do. I always talk too much. I'm sorry.
No. We have long questions.
We had really long questions this time, and this is just a wonderful story, and we're so thankful that you came on to talk about it. We're going to move into what we're calling the lightning round for our Zibby author group. And this is not about your book. This is really just about you, so that readers out there can get to know you a little bit more. So we're going to just fly through them. How many queries or submissions did you do for this book?
None.
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 Oh,
None.
back to the jealousy.
I'm really sorry.
No,
Zibby sent me a note after she read some of my writing and knew me from her book club and said, "Do you want to write a memoir for me?" So
Oh my goodness.
I know it's terrible. We were talking about
It's
jealousy
terrible.
before. You guys
No.
don't like anymore. I
We're
know.
Stop
happy
it.
for you, but we
We're
are
thrilled
jealous.
and
So
jealous at the
Now
same
I have
time.
other books and I have done queries and I have done proposals for other books. So I do know the pain of it, but this book I didn't do
Okay,
that.
well, you talked a little bit earlier about your new brown or chocolate lab, I think you said. But do you have
Winston.
pets
That's
that are
privately.
I think you've only had him for 2 months, right? And
Yes.
mostly
Yeah.
going to the veterinarian with them. But do you usually keep them with you when you write, or do you take them with you to your therapy? I would love to have a therapist with a dog. Personally.
So right now I'm actually not in therapy and I'm not doing therapy, which is an interesting time in my life. We'll see how that goes. I'm probably going to crash the car. Winston is new to us and he's very anxious. So he spent some time in a kill shelter in South Carolina in a cage for like a month. And it's interesting to be someone who works on attachment and creating secure attachment, to have a dog that, really can't bear not being around you. And I love him for his inability to hide that. This dog we got for my 11-year-old son, I made him walk a mile for 40 weeks, every day for 40 weeks before he got this dog. And that little boy did. And he fell in love with this dog and I was like, meh, whatever, who cares? And I really love this dog. I am so surprised.
That was to make sure your son would walk the dog every day.
Yeah.
That was,
and also because I thought maybe he wouldn't do it and then we wouldn't have to get a dog. So
Winston, we
Awesome.
Okay.
okay. So now you mentioned other books. What was your very first story about?
So I have 2 books that I have written since this book. One is a clinical book and one is a novel. So the clinical book is with Sounds True. I just handed it in. It's about grief in the body and, why do I have brain fog? And I explain why you have brain fog. And then I wrote a novel, and the novel is loosely based on an experience that I had with my mom before she died when we went to Maine. So there's a lot of overlap from End of the Hour. I talk about that trip in Maine, and I talk about how my mom and I, invent this sort of like jewelry heist story. And I ended up writing that book. So that also exists out there. Yeah.
That is going to be so much fun for us as readers to have all this overlap.
Right?
Okay, sorry. This is supposed to be a lightning round. Who's next?
I know, this is lightning. We know with the Zibby Books that you go on tour. Is there anyone going on book tour with you?
Yes. So my husband's coming to Miami with me. My 2 best friends are coming from Boston to New York, and my sister is flying in from Seattle. So I have the dream team. We all have, not my husband, but the rest of us all have the same sequin shirt that we'll be wearing apparently.
Oh, you got to get him one. Tie. You need
That's great.
We'll see.
Okay, downtime television, thrillers, comedies, reality shows, or rom-coms, or
God. So right now I've been watching Suits, that TV show that Meghan Markle's on. And I just I like TV that's in the background that you only have to pay like 70% attention to. So, right.
Yeah.
So like,
while I'm cooking dinner, what can I watch that I don't really have to pay attention to?
Yeah.
This is perfect for that.
So often I find things that are like old or people have watched them before. But my husband and I really like BBC police dramas that are kind of like gruesome. That's what we would sit down to watch TV. But if I was going to pick something, it would be something pretty bad, like a law show where you're like, wasn't this the same as the episode before?
Very cool.
Yeah. Melissa, I don't know. Do you want to do one more lesson?
We don't have time.
Oh, yeah. 8:35.
It's got to be done.
It looks like we are out of time.
Yeah.
We are so
Yeah.
thankful that you came on our show, and we are just really excited to support you and this launch of your book. We will be telling our friends and recommending it. So tell the listeners how and when and where they can find you and your book.
Yes. So the book comes out on the 14th. You can pre-order it now, sort of everywhere. I will be in New York on the 14th. And so if people want to come find me, there's an event you can come to. It's open to the public. You could DM me by finding me on my Instagram page. That's probably the quickest way. Meghan Riordan Jarvis. And I'm going to be in LA at Zibby's bookstore in Santa Monica in December, in early December. And I mean, honestly, like if you're reading the book and you love the book, just call me. I'll come to you. We can talk about it. I'm going to be moving around the country doing a lot of talking for all kinds of different reasons, and I'm trying to add some book clubs at the same time.
Will you let me know if you get all the way out to Hawaii?
Oh my God. Well, get me a reason to come out to Hawaii and I'll be right there. Thank you very much.
They're at the bookstore.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody go find Meghan, because this time chatting with you has been fabulous.
Yeah.
And you can find the Virgin Authors here on Facebook Live on the third Thursday of every month. On November 16th, we will be chatting with Julie Barton about how to craft a memoir and the runaway success of her memoir, Dog Medicine: How My Dog Saved Me from Myself.
And you can find more information on our website at virginauthors.com. Please also watch every month for the Zibby book collaboration authors like Meghan. She finds some incredible people. Thanks for tuning in. And Meghan, on your launch, your book launch, bring Kleenexes, because everybody will be like, anyway, I did that chapter. So that's so great. And no, it's
I've been crying every day, so yeah. I'm prepared.
Everybody have a great day. And Meghan, thank you.
Thanks, Meghan.
You're a delight. This was such an honor. Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.